Putting all of my negative feelings about Ross aside, did Ross actually cheat on Rachel? Or were they really on a break? Who was right in this situation? Let's break it all down. Hi everybody, welcome to Mind and More, where we talk about anything that comes to mind and more. Today, let's address the age-old debate of whether Ross and Rachel were actually on a break. We're going to be very methodical about this, going through everything that happened and both points of view before deciding whether Ross cheated on Rachel. If by some chance you don't know what I'm talking about, here's a quick summary. I'm referring to the couple Ross and Rachel from the 90s and early 2000s sitcom Friends. The two dated, then one day after a fight, Rachel decided that they should take a break. Immediately after this, Ross slept with another woman, and thus began the debate of whether Ross cheated on Rachel or not. Now that you have an idea, let's dissect the situation further. This situation starts in Season 3, Episode 15. Before we dive deeper, let's first define cheating. The dictionary definition of cheating is an act of deceit, fraud, trickery, or infidelity. Let's remember the act of deceit part for later. So that's the dictionary definition. But in terms of a more general definition of cheating in relationships, what most people would consider as cheating is doing something that you would normally reserve for just your romantic partner with someone else, while you're still in a relationship with your partner and without your partner's consent. I'd argue that most people agree that kissing or sleeping with someone else is definitely cheating. But under this more general definition, emotional cheating can also be considered. But that's not the point of this video. Let's go back to Ross and Rachel. Let's start with what happened before the break. In Season 3's 15th episode, Ross is upset that Rachel is not spending enough time with him. Rachel has a new job and she's working hard to get in the swing of things. We all know what a new job is like. It takes quite a bit of time and effort to learn new things and get settled, while also proving that you are the right hire. On the night of the anniversary, there's some kind of shipping disaster at Rachel's workplace that she has to fix. So she lets Ross know that she won't be able to make it for their dinner plans. Ross suggests coming over to her workplace instead, but she apologizes and declines the offer because she's too overwhelmed. Despite this, Ross disregards what she'd said and shows up to her workplace anyway, which further overwhelms Rachel. Ross becomes a distraction and she tells him to leave. When Rachel finally gets back home, Rachel brings up what happened earlier, which causes a fight. Ross says he's tired of being in a relationship with Rachel's answering machine and that he wants more time with Rachel. Ross says it's just a job, but she argues that this job is very important to her. It's the first time she's doing something that she cares about and that she's good at. She'd come a long way since her days serving coffee. Looking at both sides, it's understandable that Ross was frustrated about wanting more time with Rachel. However, it's also understandable why Rachel was needing to work so much. Anyway, Rachel was working closely with one of her new workmates, Mark, and Ross had been jealous that Rachel was spending a lot of time with him. As he's fighting with Rachel about spending too much time at work, he asks, "Is this about Mark?" Now, if he just wanted to spend more time with Rachel, why would he bring up Mark? It seems like the issue wasn't Rachel's absence. It was who she was with when she's absent. This question made it sound like it was more about jealousy than about quality time. When he asks about Mark, Rachel gets incredibly frustrated. She's tired of the fights about Mark and she tells Ross that maybe they should take a break. He initially thinks she means a break from the fight. Then Rachel clarifies that she means taking a break from each other. Soon as she says this, Ross storms out and nothing more is said between them.
No. A break from us.
Now, what is taking a break? To take a break is to interrupt or cease something temporarily. Key word here is temporarily. Let me emphasize, taking a break is not ending something. Let's move on. After the break conversation, Ross goes out to a bar where he comes across a girl he knows named Chloe. In the meantime, Rachel is sitting by her phone, hoping he calls. Instead, Mark from work calls and invites himself over. Ross does eventually call her and he hears Mark's voice in the background, and this upsets him so much that he cuts the call before Rachel can explain. So without an explanation, he jumps straight to assuming that Rachel's sleeping with Mark, which was not the case. Ross then starts drinking with Chloe and eventually sleeps with her. In the next episode, in the morning, he wakes up to a message from Rachel apologizing and basically asking to work things out. He tells Chloe he's getting back with his girlfriend and she's surprisingly happy for him. Side note, I loved her reaction. She's so carefree that she was rooting for the guy she just slept with to get back with his girlfriend. That is so funny. If you're enjoying this video and want to see more stuff like this, why not just subscribe? Ross then patches up things with Rachel but keeps it from her that he slept with Chloe the previous night. During this next day, he's all over the place making sure no one tells Rachel what happened. But unfortunately, he's a little too late and Gunther has already told her. Going back to that definition of cheating, how it's an act of deceit, Ross trying to keep his rendezvous with Chloe a secret is deceit. I will, however, give him grace because he initially wanted to come clean, but it's Joey and Chandler who got in his head and convinced him not to. Rachel and Ross then confront the entire issue. He says he thought they were broken up and Rachel responds with, "We were on a break," and thus the popular phrase was born. Ross replies that to him, the break was as good as a breakup because the breakup could have lasted forever. We defined a break as a temporary interruption, but not an end. However, Ross says that he interpreted their break as the end. Did he just interpret it this way for his own convenience? I don't know. He also says he only slept with Chloe because he thought Rachel was sleeping with Mark. This statement proves Ross's rebound with Chloe was motivated by revenge. Revenge because Rachel was supposedly with Mark, which goes back to the jealousy I mentioned earlier. But if I want to be fair, Ross was very apologetic. Also, since he left right after Rachel said she wanted a break, the terms of the break were never discussed. It wasn't clear whether they could see other people during this break. So we can say Ross wasn't wrong on a technicality. But then, when you look at what all the other circumstances were, you can't say he was right either. Before I explain why you can't say he was right, Rachel wasn't right as well. The meaning of her words, "I think we should take a break," was ambiguous. It wasn't clear whether she wanted space or whether she wanted to call it quits. This brings me back to Ross. My question is, given the gray area Ross and Rachel were in, where it wasn't clear if they were done, if Ross hadn't been so jealous about Mark, would he have still interpreted the situation as the end? The answer is probably no. We already know that he confessed that he wouldn't have gone ahead to sleep with Chloe if he hadn't thought that Rachel was sleeping with Mark. It seems as though that all his actions that night were coming from a place of jealousy. I also have another question. Since he says he interpreted Rachel's words as the end, how soon is too soon to move on? How meaningful is a relationship to you if it can end and then you end up with someone else in the same night? These are tricky questions because we all deal with heartbreak differently. Some people retreat into themselves and others distract themselves with new connections. I'm not sure we could ever reach a consensus on the appropriate timing for moving on. That being said, we can't blame Rachel for being hurt. To her, Ross was with another woman too soon that it felt like a betrayal. So what's the conclusion to all of this? Did Ross cheat? The simple answer is no. However, the more nuanced answer is that although he didn't cheat, he wasn't right in how he handled things. A technicality is not enough to put someone completely in the clear, especially when it comes to matters of the heart. Humans are not machines, and sometimes actions that are technically not wrong can still hurt others. So Ross wasn't wrong, but he also wasn't right. Ross was too abrupt with all of his actions that night. It would have helped if he'd maybe stuck around long enough for them to understand one another and discussed what this break meant. If that couldn't have happened, it would have also been great if he'd stayed long enough on the phone to let Rachel explain when he heard Mark's voice. He was so charged up with emotion, he was barely taking time to think through anything. And I think conversely, Rachel was thinking through things. When Mark came over, she didn't take the opportunity to sleep with him out of frustration. Instead, she sat with what had happened. She was able to do this because she didn't have unresolved emotions that had been brewing in the background, unlike Ross and his jealousy. A healthy relationship is built on effective communication, honesty, and trust. Ross should have trusted Rachel more. What reason did he have to be jealous of Mark when Rachel had made it extremely clear that she wasn't interested in him? He'd created an idea in his head and let it consume him. To Rachel, Mark was just a guy who she worked with, but Ross couldn't see that because his perspective was clouded with insecurity. If Mark hadn't been this conventionally attractive guy and had still been working closely with Rachel, I doubt he would have made as much of a fuss about it. All in all, when it comes to this break situation, Ross could have tried to control his insecurity and there wouldn't have been any need to take the break. On the other hand, after the break, Rachel could have tried to be more understanding about how the ambiguity of the situation contributed to what happened. That's not to say that she should have run back to Ross. If she couldn't get over him sleeping with another woman, that's completely fine. She just shouldn't have made it seem like everything had been black and white. However, with Ross, there were much deeper issues at play. Whether or not he ended up sleeping with another woman, the root problem would have still been there. The problem was that he didn't trust Rachel or their relationship, despite there not being a concrete reason to feel this way. In my opinion, whether or not Ross cheated is actually irrelevant. The real issue here wasn't infidelity. It was insecurity.